everyone. We are back to the segment and we'll continue with the same wherein we were talking about the dry ports. Since I already mentioned about, all sort of your facilities are being provided at these dry ports, and moreover, it actually acts like your transshipment facility, wherein, that you could say inward and outward movement of the containers is being taken care of. So that means it is acting as a transshipment facility also. Plus, right from, clearing all the customs formalities to just taking care of these documentation, everything is being handled majorly, all your operations, they are being handled at these dry ports, right? Then to the haulage charges, they are also to be paid off at these dry ports, and if let's suppose the sending the cargo from ICDs to CFS and then to portways, so that ways whatever the incidental charges that happens or that accrues accordingly, so that can easily be disbursed at your dry ports. Only you need not to go to any, as I said, to gateway ports. You can just channelize the things to through your these dry ports, right? And then if I talk about these dry ports, these are basically the total package of activities. You are not just getting one service, rather you are getting a list of comprehensive services, right? So when we say the list for the comprehensive services, that means you are getting the facilities for the storage also, your dwelling time will be reduced, and in case it is a break bulk cargo or a LCL cargo, that is also to be taken care by these dry port centers, right? And then too, if you are availing any duty drawback scheme, so duty drawback scheme benefit is also can be availed at this point. Now duty drawback scheme is what, if exporter is exporting such goods which comes with some provisions that sort of provide an exemption from the duty charges, so that is a duty drawback scheme. And basically all these benefits can obviously again be availed at these dry ports, right? And right from when we talk about these dry port areas, as I said, they are established to set up to, let's suppose, decongest the ports. They are established to reduce the time for empty container movements, and obviously they are known as the lungs of logistical networks. So when we say lungs of logistical networks, that means no activity can be fully taken care of without these dry ports there being into the main charge, right? And when we talk about these dry ports, then it's not like the dry ports they work into isolation. Rather, there are number of other things that provide a support, that actually substantiate the working of your ICD and your CFS centers. So if suppose that we have to talk about the facilities at the dry ports, then you at a dry port, I'm not talking about the functions, talking about the facilities. You will always found the warehousing facility, you will find a yard for the containers. So when I say the yard for the containers, means where in all these empty yard your containers will be put up, where your loaded containers will be put up, where the reefer containers are to be placed up, where let's suppose the containers that are to go further for this to the CFS centers to the connecting one, for the same it goes through your railway networks majorly, most of the time. So you will be having dedicated freight corridors out there, you will be having the rail sidings to to ease the you could say flow of goods. So that means you can talk about there are number of facilities which are being available at dry ports. So it's not like that just you could say ki they are just performing one or the other activity, rather they are providing a set of activities. And when we say a set of activities, then as I said, that receiving, stuffing, consolidation, inspection, fumigation, steam towering, right, stowage, taking care of stowage things. So all these things are being managed through your these dry ports only. And if I further say upon how is the process like in case of your export and import clearances. So what happens out is, let's suppose starting up from the export, so you'll be submitting a shipping bill, right? So there will be a shipping bill submission, and when we say the submission of the shipping bill, that means that bill is to be submitted in number of your copies. So it can be in, you could say, 7 copies, wherein the one of the copy will go to the ICD centers, one will go to the, let's suppose, the RBI, wherein because the government says that since you are dealing up into these things wherein the foreign exchange is required, so that means you are supposed to maintain a foreign exchange bank account with the bank, right? And you are supposed to provide a copy of your the shipping bill whenever the cargo is intended to go for the outward movement, and that shipping bill will go to your RBI, right? It will go to the ICD centers, and the related authorities will be taking care of the different functions. And after that shipping bill, you have submitted the same, then in case of your exports, the entire clearance, when we are talking about exports, it happens at your these ICD centers only. That means whatever inspection is to be done, it will be conducted at the main ICD centers, right? And through those ICD centers, if you get the clearance, then you have a very, you could say, safe passage to go for. Safe passage as in, you are not supposed to go through the formalities again and again, right? It will not keep on, recurring. Once you get the permissions from the main, you could say, ICD center, then the journey is very smooth upon. And further, when we talk about with respect to, after submitting those shipping bill, it will be scrutinized, and you will be supposed to submit the, export general manifest. You will be supposed to attach along with the packing list, and there to completing a number of formalities, and through then only you will be able to, pass on the cargo to the CFS centers or to the main portway gates, right? But what happens out in case of your imports? Imports actually is a two-way process for clearance. So, whenever any cargo is intended to arrive in India, it is mandated that the 10% of the inspection, whatever the cargo is there, 10% of the same will be inspected at your, you could say, main gateway ports. Then it will be sent for further clearance for, to these ICD centers, and then the, you could say, full-fledged custom clearance process will be taken up at these your ICD centers, right? But initial 10% it has to go to your these, you could say, main gateway ports, right? Then it can go for further to your these, ICD centers. But in case of your exports, there is no mandatory clause. Rather, it goes like this way that, your entire cargo has to seek the clearance from the main ICD center, then it can pass on to the main, you could say, the gateway ports. So that is how the process differs for your import and the export procedures in case of your, trade, you could say, logistical movement. And further on, when we are talking about the same, then we have to also take into point, that there are number of freight forwarders that provide these facilities at these dry ports. So these freight forwarders, they are entrusted with all sort of your, you could say, functions, services that are to be provided at these, main port, main ICD centers. So they provide you every sort of facility, right from warehousing to storing to packing the cargo. So that is, you could say that these, your dry ports, they play a very instrumental role in, you could say, giving a push to the movement of your cargo to you could say, execution of the smooth flow of your, trade. So that is, your dry ports have been very instrumental, and you could say that not just, this thing, if there is proper handling at these dry ports, there will be reduced demurrage charges also. So what are these demurrage charges for? Basically, there is this term called, first we have to understand for the same first very term, that is your layoff, right? So when we are talking about the layoff, it means the period that is being taken up for the Steve Dowering operations, the period that you take up for the loading and the unloading of the cargo. So in your clause, whatever clauses are going to be there, let's suppose you are going for the chartering things, as we discussed in the last class about the tramp shipping and the liner shipping models. So if we'll go for the same, then you have this thing to be mentioned into your clause agreement, that what is the layoff time period. Layoff time period, for what time period the, when we are excluding the time periods of your loading, unloading or any other time period from the you could say time of your actual voyage. So it is mentioned into your agreement that, let's suppose you are taking into account the gazetted holidays also, public holidays also, plus the time that it takes for the loading and the unloading of the cargo. So you have to mention the same initially at your agreement. If you are exceeding the you could say the time period which is mentioned into these your agreement, then you are supposed to pay the charges on to the same for exceeding the amount that is mentioned as a layoff time period in your agreement. And if you exceed the same, the charges that you pay are known as your demurrage charges. So these tripods, they try to handle the process in such a smooth way that you are not supposed to pay these demurrage charges or the higher demurrage charges. Because of this very reason, you could say that all these activities are being taken care by these dry ports. So they'll make sure that there is proper provision for the loading, for the unloading, and you could say every related activity. So that ways you can talk about that yes, these demurrage charges also get reduced if we'll be having the proper facilities available at these dry ports. So you can see into your screens that there are number of advantages of the when it comes to the dry port area. It basically is helping the medium and small exporters. It is ensuring that you are not supposed to go through the custom formalities, and plus since they are declared customers, it is very easier for the you could say for obtaining the permissions at for the custom clearances at these dry port area rather than getting them at any other point. Plus you are supposed to complete all those formalities, otherwise even if you were supposed to go through. So that ways you can see about that these dry ports, they are actually the lungs of your this logistical network, wherein it provides that support to the main portway area so that decongestion happens out there. And if it is going to be a decongested port, the the dwelling time will be reduced, layoff time period will be reduced, since customs are already taken care of. So the core focus will be on to placement of the goods or the cargo or the containers onto your these you could say these your main portway entries, right? So dry ports have gained the prominence, as I said, since your time of your multimodal transportation, since the time of your containerization, and over the time period they are enhancing themselves, right? A number of push you could say is through the government also. Why the government? Because the government's vision is to even government is focusing towards that how can they come up with more and more ICD centers which can be of you could say better help to the exporters, and especially the small and medium exporters who are having very limited resources to develop into the international level. So that ways it provides a very common platform, right? And it provides of ease, sort of an ease to you could say the exporters. And plus when we are saying that these gateway ports are handled in a much better way, that means all these activities are further delegated to these ICD and the CFS centers, and it makes it very easier for your the main gateway ports to handle the other set of your activities. Let's suppose handling the containers, let's suppose, you could say onto, taking care of your other formalities, since everything right from your labeling, marking, warehousing, everything is taken care at these ICD centers. Now if I have to talk about the ICD center, I've already told you this thing, that the very first ICD center was there at Pragati Maidan, but if I have to talk about the largest one, it is there at Tughlakabad, right? Now Tughlakabad is there, you could say, equipped with well infrastructure, having whatever, you just can go to the website of the same and you can see what all facilities are provided at this Tughlakabad ICD center, wherein you will get the well equipped resources, whether it is from providing your the container yards area, to providing the containers, to taking care of any activity. So these your dry ports, they are very effective in that way. And since I already talked about Tughlakabad being also the one of the you could say the largest one, handling all the greatest movement of your containers, because now the movement of your containers, it is there handled through your ICD and the CFS centers, right? And the government is also giving a push through a dedicated freight corridor. So if we talk about the your this NLP also, so NLP also has this provision that wherein it provides for the dedicated freight corridor services through these ICD centers to the main gateway ports. And when we are talking about dedicated freight corridors, that means there are railway lines which are established at these ICD centers, and through which easy handling of your loading or unloading of your cargo happens at these ICD centers, right? And when we are talking about these ICD centers, we have to also look onto the other sort of your infrastructural support that the government is providing in this very journey. So the government is also taking care of that, it is trying to even, let's suppose, all these warehouses which are these public sector warehouses which are just lying dormant, the government is giving that push that it is trying to make them active to fully utilize the space, which otherwise is just not being utilized, it is underutilized. So maybe converting them into the rightful places for let's suppose like the ICD centers, right? So this will basically is going to give a push to your international trade only. And then too, when we are talking about these ICD or these CFS centers, they are you could say ki helps you out in reducing all those container movements. And by reducing the container movements, as I mentioned rightly, that they will take into account, or they will preferably be talking about now you could say ki managing the space efficiently, right? And if even in case, let's say हम बात कर रहे हैं aggregation की, aggregation is basically what? You are taking the cargo from one person, second person, because these are small exporters. As I said, it will be very helpful for the small exporters. So these are small exporters which are not dealing into the bulk quantum, maybe the quantum is comparatively lesser. So what happens out is, let's say a person A has also provided the same set of your cargo as person B, right? Now person C is also providing the same set of cargo. So A, B, C. Now if we go individually to the container load capacity of the cargo will be less in individual cases in all these A, B and C scenario. But when we as a freight forwarder, or as in case where ICD centers are concerned, so they will they do what is they consolidate the cargo, since it is of homogeneous nature. It will make obviously that labeling marking will be done. Let's suppose the cargo A is labeled AB, right? Cargo B is labeled something, C is labeled something. So accordingly the marking and the labeling will be taken care of, and then they will be further sent out to you could say ki after the due labeling and you could say marking of the same is done, they are properly placed up, then it can be taken up further for the you could say smoother flow of journey. Now another things, when it comes to these dry ports, and you can just, if just visit to any nearby dry port area, and through which you through that you will obviously be getting greater insights, the field experience with respect to, you could see thousands and thousands of container lying into the container yard area onto the main ICD centers near to the railway lines, wherein they are connected to the CFS centers accordingly by via your these you could say these railway lines, and then from there on it goes to the CFS. CFS further goes for the inspection, the custom clearances. The CFS goes for you could say providing every set of activities as they are into available onto the ICD centers. So that ways you can talk about that these dry ports, they being very effective, and they have been majorly interested with handling all the container movement. They're interested in reducing the dwelling time period, in sort of just making sure that these demurrage charges are gets reduced. So I'll also give a mention about one of the article that is being there into the newspapers, and it is also substantiated by the reports also, that if we are able to reduce onto the dwelling time period, we are able to reduce or cut down the lay of time period, then we can actually save a lot in terms of your demurrage charges. And when we are saying that in terms of reducing the demurrage charges, that means we are giving a push towards the green shipping, because there is this concept called green shipping which talks about that how can these cost of fuel that is being incurred by just lying or laying off at port area or for the purpose of loading or the unloading, so how can we cut down onto the same. So then this concept of green shipping comes into the picture. It says we can reduce the shipping time, right? And because it is no somewhere, it is not mentioned into some reports that yes, that we are able to able to save the cost that we otherwise incur onto the fuel for the ships which are just lying around the port area, and lying around the port area, and it is actually leading to consumption of more and more fuel, which is not good for the environment also. So if it is not good for the environment, it is going to create the carbon emissions, and thereon the impact can be great, it can be very big. So through this green shipping model, it says since we don't know how much of the fuel expenses that we otherwise bear up for layoff time period of these vessels at the port area, so how much of the same is actually recovered through your demurrage charges. So just saying that we are able to cover up on the cost through these demurrage charges will not be an enough reason, and will not be a sounding reason for let's say supposing or supporting the traditional mode, or not giving a push towards reducing the dwelling time or the layoff time. So rather it says that we can go for your green shipping wherein let's suppose we can come up with some punitive measures, we can come up with some other you could say penalties and fines, so that your carbon emissions that we are talking about, that gets reduced, because the carbon footprints that we are generating, it is going to impact the economy, not just economy but the mother earth, right? So it is greatly going to impact the same. It is going to increase the burden onto the earth in terms of if there will be greater carbon emissions, then just imagine upon the scenario. So that is why this green shipping is also it's much, you could say, advisable. Plus over the time period, since we already talked about all your activities which were earlier being handled through the manual operations are now you could say being handled through your these you could say digitally integrated technologies. So when we say digitally integrated technologies, right from the customs, everything is being handled through the ICE gate portal. Similarly, if you have to do generate an invoice, that is also generated online, right? If you have, so every record of the consignment that is intended to go to some other point, it channelized through our route, it goes through our route, and every list is there mentioned onto the digital database. So that means we are creating an integrated structure wherein our, you could say ki manual labor will be less involved, rather will be integrating the technology and integrating in a manner it leads to greater benefit to all these segments. So that is how we can say upon that. Yes, dry ports, they are very very effective in delivering the number of activities, in decongesting the port, in providing a support to small and medium exporters, ensuring no much container movements are there, and ensuring the custom clearance process to be a very smoother, right? And this way you can say that over the time period, maybe 5 years or 10 years down the line, through these efforts, if we channelize through the towards the mother earth, wherein we are promoting the grey sort of a green shipping, and also cutting down onto the dwelling time, making sure all the activities are done digitally without putting a pressure onto the you could say the other parts. So that ways we can talk about that sooner the time is going to come wherein we are going to jump greater positions in when it comes to trade logistics. And definitely the dry ports, they are very effective in you could say ki the smooth flow of the you could say trade. So this is exactly about your dry ports, its functionings, and how they are able to you could say ki provide greater support to major activities, and how containers have been instrumental in the you could say establishment or of your dry ports over the time period. So this is all about the dry ports, role of your dry ports in the trade logistical industry. If you have any query, you can just comment on to the link of the video, and we'll try to take up the query in the next segment. So thank you so much.